Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr. H's Hot Pot. Join me today back in Bolton, or Bolton to give the town its correct title, as I'm currently stood in front of the facade of 121 Radcliffe Road in the Hoff area of Bolton. Now, this building will be instantly recognisable to many Fred Dibner fans out there as Fred's former home. And I'm here today, Hot Potters, to investigate a little bit of a story that I've read in the Bolton News regarding a bit of a dispute between the current owner of Fred's former home and Bolton Council, as apparently the new owner has built a number of small timber structures at the back of Fred's home, and he's done it without planning permission, allegedly, and Bolton Council have ordered that they be torn down. So there's a bit of trouble at mill at Fred's former home, Hot Potters. So without further ado, I'm now going to whip the camera round and we're going to go around the back and take a look at these structures and see what all the fuss is about. So, Hot Potters, you now join me in Tong Cemetery, which is just a short drive away from Fred's former home on Radcliffe Road. And from Tong Cemetery, we will get the best view of these little structures that are causing so much trouble and have been ordered to be pulled down, as it overlooks the rear of Fred's former home. Now, I do apologise if there's any noise in the background. There is a little bit of tree felling going on in Tong Cemetery today. They're here trying to tidy it up a little bit and no doubt trying to knock it in shape for 2026. Hopefully the chainsaws won't interfere with the audio too much and it won't spoil your enjoyment of this video. Now, while we make our way towards what is the rear of Fred's former home, I'll tell you a little bit about the story that featured in the Bolton News. Now, the current owner, gentleman by the name of Mr. Wahid Khan, he purchased the property around 2020-2021, and as such he started making changes to it and started knocking it into shape for the purpose that he wanted to use the property for, which he wanted to use it to repair petrol and diesel vehicles. And I believe he has a breakdown service, and he also trades in cars known as Wady's Cars. But one of the things that he did do was he built a small structure at the base of his property. He built a staircase leading down to the riverbank on the River Tong, and he built a small structure and he named it the Hideaway. And he started renting that out to people. You could go in there for about £150 a night. Now, fair play to Wady, we'll call him Wady, I hope he doesn't mind. He never tried to cash in on Fred's name. He never tried to bill it as you would be staying on Fred Dibner's property, because the area that he built it, traditionally, doesn't belong to 121 Radcliffe Road. It's just at the rear. And what he did, he went and leased the land from the landowner and built this structure. And there's a picture of it in its early days on Google Maps, as someone had walked along the riverbank. No doubt they was doing a little bit of trespassing and they'd taken photographs all the way along. I'll put a screenshot in for you now so that you can see what it looked like back in 2023 when Wady first started to build little structures at the rear of his property by the side of the River Tong. I'll do that for you now. Now, it doesn't look much from that picture, but as time's gone on, he slowly started building more and more. And it must have been successful, the Hideaway, as he decided to build a second one, which is called Parkview Cottage. And if you go on Facebook, on the Hideaway Facebook page, which I'll put a link in the description below, you can see that inside they're a pretty nifty job. He's done a good job of them. He hasn't just knock them together out of any old rubbish. he's spent time, or he's got builders in, and they've done a proper job of it. As to be fair, I think Fred would be proud of them. But they have caused controversy because, according to the neighbours, the people that he's been hiring these structures out to, they've not been very respectful. They've been letting fireworks off and playing loud music and just getting drunk and disorderly and just causing a nuisance, basically. So the neighbours have pretty much, I think, grassed him up to the council, because there is no way that the council has only just found out about these. Because as you'll see in a moment, it's in such a position that passing people wouldn't see it. You've got to seek it out. Anyway, I'll whip the camera around for you now, and we'll see if you can spot these structures from where I'm now stood. So here we are. We're now at the rear of Fred's former home, which is just beyond that tree line there in front of you. And you can probably hear the River Tong that's trickling by. No doubt it's running fast today with all the rain that we've had. And I'm currently stood on the main footpath that leads through Tong Cemetery. There are all the graves in the background. And from this position, you wouldn't know these little structures are there. But if we just cross over this grassed area here and head towards the River Tong, they'll slowly come into view. And like I say, you do have to question how the council have suddenly found out about these. As I do agree with Wadey when he says they can't be seen from anywhere. You've got to basically come to this spot here before you can see what's been constructed. Now the one that's facing you there, just beyond that boat, that is the original structure, the hideaway. And that's all that was here in 2023. Fred's old sheds and that are just up there. They're in this area here. What Wadey's done, he's built a staircase leading down from his property to this little area here. And just look at the River Tong, that's running fast today, isn't it? So I'll now make my way around here, and we'll be able to take a look at Parkview Cottage. I will try and get right down, but I don't want to be going bum over pap, as I say. Now as we make our way down here, for those of you who are big fans of the original Fred Dibner documentaries from the early 80s, you'll probably remember a scene where Fred was stood in this cemetery and he was basically talking about one day wanting to be laid to rest in this particular cemetery, and as we all know, that did come to pass. But one of the little anecdotes he was telling everybody about was that at one time his father had told him that part of this cemetery had collapsed into the River Tong, and there's a scene where it wasn't flowing as fast as it is today, but you could see little bits of gravestone in the River Tong, and I think that that was filmed here. I'll put that in for you now, and then we can do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison.
Then my dad used to tell me a tale about they had a big flood once and it washed one or two of them down the river, you know, like the corpses there is. The thing is that, you know, whether there's any truth in it or not, I don't know, but I know down in that riverbed there's all sorts of gravestones.
Right, Hot Potters, well, I'm now up close and personal with the River Tong, and I've come a little bit further down the riverbank to try and locate where that little clip from the documentaries from the early 1980s was filmed. And although I've not been able to locate those pieces of gravestone, as obviously it was back in the 1980s and things change, This is definitely the area that it was filmed in. And I'll just whip the camera around now and you'll see why. So this is the view from a little further downstream, looking back towards Fred's former home. Up there is where we've just been. And this, I think, is the area that Fred was talking about where the cemetery collapsed. As you can see, the erosion of the banks there. Now what is really interesting here is some of the things that's amongst this rubble. Especially this piece of metal here, which I would say is an old sign for Capstan cigarettes. And what's the betting that that is from Fred's old home? Whether or not it was stolen soon after Fred passed away and it's just ended up down here or not, who knows? But this is definitely the area that that little bit of footage was filmed from. As just up here, there's a number of gravestones that have collapsed towards the River Tong, but haven't made it actually into the river. This piece being a classic prime example. So Fred's father's story is definitely correct. But back to today's video. That little structure there, that's the second one that was built in this area. That's Parkview Cottage. And that looks really Gucci inside. Again, if you go on the Facebook page, I won't use Wady's photographs, but you'll be able to see that it's kitted out very well inside. But that one's been ordered to be dismantled. The hideaway that's behind that large gazebo, that has to go, as does the gazebo, and then there's some play equipment just beyond that boat there. Now we'll see if we can get down a little bit. As I say, I don't want to go bum over pap, and there's been a lot of rain recently, so I don't want to slip. Well, speaking personally, I think it's a real shame that he has to dismantle all this. Because, yes, he does have a duty of care to his neighbours to sort of vet the people who were taking out these little cabins. But pretty much, all he's doing is being an entrepreneur. And making a little bit of a bob or two on side. And I don't blame him for that. But what's your thoughts, Hot Potters? Do you think all this should stay here? Or do you think he hasn't played by the rules and he should pay the price? It should all be demolished. I mean, that story ran a week ago and it doesn't look like he's made any effort to bring the sledgehammer in just yet. Maybe he's appealing it, I don't know. But yeah, bit of trouble at mill. And this, really, is a bit of a rare sight. You don't get to see this a lot. It never featured in the Fred Dibner documentaries. The only bit we got to see was, I'll just make my way along here. That area up there with the lights, that's where he used to have his boiler and steam engines. And every now and again he'd just let the steam out, he'd let the pressure out over this ravine, over the River Tong. Obviously no one was going to get scalded with it or anything like that. So that's the only bit of this area you get to see in the documentaries. And you can just see the outline through the trees there of Fred Dibner's former home. But yeah, what's your thoughts on this? Is Bolton Council correct in saying that it all has to go? Please leave your comments below. Right, I'm now going to make my way back up there and get back onto the cemetery path. and we'll slowly start to wrap this video up. Right, well, I'm safely back on terra firma, the main footpath in Tong Cemetery, and as we're in Tong Cemetery, I think it's only right and fitting that we should make our way to Fred's final resting place and end this video from there. But as we make our way slowly back whence we came and towards Fred's grave, I think it's worth noting that whoever has owned 121 Radcliffe Road, and I'm lumping dear old Fred into this statement, they've always had problems with the neighbours. Fred, back in the 1990s, famously had a long-running argument with one of the neighbours close by, and it ended up with him landing before Bolton magistrates for some petty infringement of the rules. But that's a story for another day and another video. Skipping forward to when Leon Posner owned the property and he tried to turn it into the Fred Dibner Heritage Centre, again he had complaints and moaning from his neighbours about cars and vehicles being parked up and it just causing problems because there's no parking. There was no car park or anything, or any facility for people to park up who were visiting the centre. Now, Wahid Khan owns the property, or Wady, as we're calling him in this video. It seems he too is having problems and moaning from the neighbours. So you do have to ask yourself, Hot Potters, and this is just my observation, it's very easy for me to say this because I'll be shooting off back to Wigan soon and I don't have to live at the side of 121 Radcliffe Road. But it does make you wonder, is the problem with the occupants of 121 Radcliffe Road, or is it with the neighbours? Just make you wonder. You've got to ask yourself that question, haven't you? Anyway, I'm now going to make my way to Fred's grave and we'll take a little look at that and then we'll wrap this video up from there. So what, Potters, as we continue to make our way through Tong Cemetery towards the area where Fred's grave is located, I'd just like to make a slight detour, if I may, as going back to those documentaries from the early 1980s where Fred was stood inside this cemetery rather casually and matter-of-factly talking about one day being buried here. That gravestone there is the one that he was propped up against talking about it. Amazing to think that back in the 1980s, Fred was stood there and just talking about life experiences, really, and various little anecdotes. He also talked about there being a lion tamer who got mauled by a lion being buried here, and that's true as well, as someone else has done a video on that, and maybe one day I'll do a video on that myself. But if you're wondering how to find Fred's grave, perhaps one day you want to come here and pay your respects, I'll show you how to find it, as it's very, very easy to find. It's not tucked away in a little corner somewhere. Actually, it's in a rather exposed area, and when we get to Fred's grave, you'll be able to see that he's keeping an eye on the old place at Radcliffe Road because you can see his former house from where he's buried. Whether that was done by accident or by design, we'll never know. Anyway, I'll whip the camera around now and I'll show you how to locate Fred Dibner's grave. So, to find Fred Dibner's grave, all you need to do is find that mortuary chapel that's in the centre of your screen and where all the noise of the tree felling is coming from today, and make your way along this path here. And then if we walk down here towards where this water tap box is, there's a little path that peels off to your left. And as you get to this point here, in a moment, you'll catch your first glimpse of Fred Dibner's grave, which is just over there, beyond that gravestone there. Now, I'm not going to walk across there, mainly because I had it drummed in me as a child, never to walk on graves wherever possible. So I'm going to follow the footpath. But there's the water tap box, which has been pushed over today. And if we make our way up this path here, and then across, we should be at the foot of Fred's grave. There we go, just pull in here. And there we are. A number of flat caps and various tools that have been placed on his grave by well-wishers, and it's good to see that the cans of Guinness and John Smith's are still there. Man after my own heart there, Fred. I know when I was younger I used to prefer lager, but now I'm in my 50s myself, I prefer bitter and stout. And the headstone simply reads Fred Dibner, 1938, MBE, 2004. Remember. And it simply says underneath, a much loved steeplejack. Yet we could write so much more, couldn't we, on it? TV personality, engineer, after dinner speaker, you name it, Fred could turn his hand to it. And I wonder if the golden spanner, the little Easter egg that not many people know about, on the plinth, is still there. Or should I say if it's still visible. Unfortunately you can't see it today. And just to show you, there's Fred's grave. And just beyond those trees in the centre of your screen is where Fred's former home is located. So he's still keeping an eye on the old place. And I wonder what he would make of all the legal wranglings and today's shenanigans. One thing's for certain, Fred, all those statements that you made in the documentaries about how, as a nation, things were going downhill. You were retired, lad. Things haven't got any better. And it could be argued that you're better off out of it, especially with the values that you held. Anyway, folks, I'm going to whip the camera around now and wrap this video up. Right, Hot Potters, well, I'm going to leave dear old Fred and make my way out of Tong Cemetery as it's starting to get a bit overcast and I think we're going to get a bit of light rain. So I'm going to make my way back to the old jalopy now and head off back to Wigan and edit up all this footage ready for your edification as always. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, taking a look and discussing the controversy that is surrounding those small structures that have been built by the new owner of Fred's former home at the back of the property. I personally don't think he's doing anything wrong because it overlooks the cemetery, and to sound a little bit crass, it's not really disturbing anybody, is it, what he's doing? However, he does have a duty to vet the people that he's letting those buildings out to regarding fireworks and causing a nuisance to his neighbours. After all, he has to live at the side of them just as much as they have to live at the side of him, don't they? Anyway, I'll leave it there. Please leave your comments below. I'm going to get out of here now and head off back to Wigan. Until the next time, bye-bye for now.
It's going. Going.
Run, 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 run.